And we still got 8 minutes. So I can tell you the old man with a bike story. Uh, Victoria, please keep the recording going. I think the recorded students are going to want to hear this story. It's not that great of a story, guys. Am I right, Juliana? It's just a story. So when I was, it's amazing. Okay. So when I was 18 years old, or no, I was like 17, I graduated high school. I got a bunch of money for my graduation. Like I got like thousands of dollars. My grandma gave me a bunch of money. So I had all this money. I'm like, what am I going to do with it? Save it for college? Heck no. I'm going to go on a vacation to Europe. So I wanted to go to Britain and Scotland, Wales, So because I was so young, my mom went with me. My mom helped me, organize the trip. So we went to Britain, went to Scotland. So I went to this place in Scotland called the Isle of Arran, which is a really cool place. It's like an island off the coast of this peninsula, kind of going off into the Irish Sea. Here's some wads of cash, darling. So anyways, I go to the island of Arran, and it's such a scenic, beautiful island. And my mom and I, you have to take a boat over there. My mom and I get off the boat, and we're like, there's these places where you can rent bicycles, to go around the island, right? So this is such a scenic island. So I'm like, yeah, let's rent a bike and go around the island. So my mom and I, we go to the first bike shop we see. There's like this like old, it looks like a traditional like Scotch Irish house, like all stones, with like the plaster and stuff. And there's all these bicycles in the yard, and this old man comes shuffling out, and he's like, hey, I want to rent a bicycle. He's like all old and just got a weird accent, and like you can barely understand him. And so we rent the bike, and I'm like, when do we got to be back? He's like, I don't know, just as long as you come back, okay, as long as the bike's okay, let's just come back a little, We're like, okay. And so my mom and I get on these bikes, and so we start riding. We're trying to figure out how long is it going to take us to get around this island. Like, how big is this island? So I'm looking on the map, and I'm like, oh, this island's 18 kilometers, long around. So I do my math. I'm like 18 kilometers. That comes out to be about like, what is that? Like 9 miles, 10 miles. I don't know. So then we got like, several hours. So I'm like, we can ride like 9 miles in, 4 or 5 hours. So we start like riding our bikes around the island, just doing our thing. It's beautiful. And we're taking our time. We're like stopping at places and like just looking at things and like, oh, it's such a beautiful island, So we're going around the island. And then at some point, I start noticing the signs on the island that say between the cities, and they're in miles. It says like, next town 3 miles. I'm like, wait a minute, miles. And then I realized like, oh yeah, like in Britain, or at least here, they don't use kilometers. They use miles. Like the rest of Europe use kilometers. And so I think the island is actually 18 miles, not 18 kilometers. So I realize we've been like taking our sweet time, just like thinking like, oh, we're going to get through this in a few hours. And now I realize like we have to ride 18 miles, and the island is way bigger than I thought. So the last ferry like leaves the island at like 4 p.m. or something. And I start realizing like we are like, unless we haul some serious butt, we're not going to get to the ferry on time. So I'm like, Mom, it's miles, we gotta go. And I'm like, like riding the bike fast. My mom's like in the dust behind, like I can see her like on the road, like small, So my mom's like huffing and puffing, and I'm just like hauling, So anyhow, these bikes, these elderly man's Scottish bikes were not meant for like this sort of like high intensity, like, high endurance biking. They were meant for leisurely. So I'm like standing up, like biking like this, like when you stand up and you're like going like that, to get speed. So I break the bike. I'm riding. I feel like ka-chunk, and then the pedals stop turning, and I'm like, oh gosh. So I pull off the side of the road, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's just the chain. Maybe I put the chain back on. No, I actually broke something in the bike. Like I couldn't put the chain back on. My mom rides up. She's like, she comes up and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I broke this old man's bike because he couldn't go fast. So she's like, oh my God. I'm like, what are we going to do? So of course, now my mom has to walk her bike, because she can't just leave me behind, even though I left her behind. But so we walk a little ways, and then we come up to this town where there's a bus stop, and I'm like, maybe we could bring our bike on the bus because this is like Scotland. So this bus pulls up, and and I'm like holding a bike, and I'm like, can I bring this bike on the bus? And the bus driver's like, sure, whatever, So my mom and I like get on the bus, and I'm holding a bike, like when you have to carry a bike, how annoying it is. Like when you're like holding it like this, and you're holding it up in front of you, So I'm on the bus. And I'm like walking down the aisle, and I'm like, excuse me. And like the people are like, because like the only space, he told us to put it in the back. He's like, go to the back where there's space. So my mom and I are walking down walking down the aisle with these bicycles. We were so obnoxious to the people on the bus, the only people with bikes. So we sit down and we're like, drive us back to, what was the town called? Lochranza. Like drive us back to Lochranza. So the bike or the bus drives us. And of course, I'm so mad. I'm looking at the island at all the pretty scenery I'm missing because I couldn't ride the bike. So he drops us off like about a half hour before the ferry comes. And I got to return the bikes to the old man, and I don't want to talk to the old man, and he didn't really leave me any instructions on how to return the bike. He just said, bring it back, So I didn't want to have to like explain it to him. So me and my mom get back, and we just kind of get there, and I just kind of go like, shoot. And like, like when you take a bike and go like that and it kind of goes and then it wobbles and falls over, I just kind of get to his yard and I'm like, whoop, and like whip the bike into his yard, and it just kind of goes, and I'm like, come on, Mom, we got to get to the ferry. So we get to the ferry and leave. And I never saw the old man again. I don't know. Yeah, he probably is to this day. Yeah, Juliana. He comes back, pulls the bike out, and it falls to pieces. What's wrong with your bike, old man? This guy must be dead. I mean, he was like 80 some years old in 1998. So this guy is dust by now. But to this day, I want to go back and get a bike and finish the bike tour of the island because I'm like angry about it. So he's watching me tell the story from heaven. Yeah. Bless me, old bike man. Sorry about breaking your bike, but you shouldn't have given me a bike that can't go fast. All right. See you guys.